inflation was going up at the time he went into the White House.
Yes, that's true.
Making things more expensive, one would argue, is not going to help ease inflation. But I noticed Donald Trump doesn't talk about inflation anymore. He was going to solve it on day one. He hasn't. Now he talks about cutting the cost of government, which was rarely mentioned on the campaign trail.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and that's something.
Today, we're looking at a heated exchange between former journalist Matthew Wright and Greg Swan, the chair of Republicans overseas. The discussion takes a sharp turn as they debate Elon Musk's growing influence in government and whether an unelected figure should have so much power without direct accountability from voters. Matthew Wright challenges that idea, raising questions about democracy, responsibility, and who truly holds power behind the scenes. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's get into it.
But first, to the chair of Republicans overseas, Greg Swenson. Morning to you, Greg. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Matthew.
Are you looking forward to Liberation Wednesday?
Yeah. I think some of the comments from the listeners were good. I think Matt specifically, the other Matt, had some good comments. You know, that imports and exports are not a meaningful part of the U.S. economy. One of the comments about tariffs are going to crash the U.S. economy is laughable. Okay, so, you know, even with tariffs imposed on exporters or importers, you're going to see at most 250 billion of goods and services affected. The tax cuts and deregulation will amount to 5 trillion in relief on businesses and consumers. So, you know, they're just everything that we're doing with tariffs is, you know, it's being done for a number of reasons. But what's clear is that it's similar to the tariffs in the first term. They're insignificant compared to tax reform and deregulation, which typically lifts the economy and increases wages, which ultimately results in tax revenues as well. So, no, it's.
I mean, you say that. I mean, Donald Trump spent most of the campaign trail talking about inflation. Yeah. Since he's come into that, I mean, we haven't got the latest figures, but inflation was going up at the time he went into the White House.
Yes, that's true.
Making things more expensive, one would argue, is not going to help ease inflation. But I noticed Donald Trump doesn't talk about inflation anymore. He was going to solve it on day one. He hasn't. Now he talks about cutting the cost of government, which was rarely mentioned on the campaign trail. Yeah,
no, it's interesting. And that's something that we conservatives wish that he had talked about more. And so when he came in, you know, guns a-blazing, we were all very pleased. And, you know, Elon Musk is doing a great job. True, he is unelected. So is the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Energy. I mean, the only person that's elected.
They're accountable to Congress. Elon Musk isn't accountable to anyone. So
no,
if someone's got,
it's not true, Matthew. Not true. He's accountable to the executive branch, like the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury. None of those guys.
Donald Trump. So he's accountable to his mate Donald Trump, who's going to buy his cars. That's a nice and cozy arrangement. What if you're an American citizen? If you're an American citizen and you don't like the way this unelected coup is being conducted, you have no democratic recourse at all.
But Matthew,
land of the free.
But that's completely false, right? You do. You have the option to vote for the president.
No, you're missing my point. Presumably deliberately. I'm talking about Elon Musk. If you don't like what an unelected bureaucrat is doing, you can't do anything about it. Because
that's right. Until the next election.
Brilliant.
Right. And until
you
the
can't
next
even
election.
do about it the next way. You can get rid of Trump, but that doesn't have any bearing on Elon Musk.
Well, that's because the president appoints the secretaries of all those cabinet posts. So that's what you do. You appoint, the executive branch manages those people.
Would Keir Starmer be wise to stand up, flex a bit of muscle? Does Donald Trump like, as we believe Putin likes, you know, people that stand up for themselves, strong leaders, or is he better off being nice and doing tea and come and meet the king and all that kind of stuff?
I don't know. I think what he's doing so far is working. And I think that the president likes the United Kingdom. He actually likes Keir Starmer in spite of their political differences. They're getting along quite well. There's a team of people from the government in Washington working on a trade deal. So I hope that works out. And so, yeah, I think so far so good from Keir Starmer.
That view from Matt, there was something else in there as well, that we could be a potential conduit between the US and the EU.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, I found that quite an appealing idea. I mean, I don't know if it's remotely possible, but has it got legs?
I think it's a great idea. I've mentioned it a few times myself. And Matthew, you made a really good point. There is no meaningful trade surplus or deficit with the UK, which puts them in a great position because President Trump has to fix the trade deficit with the EU. It's 180 billion. That's funded by US taxpayers, which was fine for generations when we were really rich and didn't have a debt problem. Now we have 11 trillion of new debt, 2.5 trillion a year under Biden. And that's just unsustainable, right? We're paying interest payments on 36 trillion in debt. That comes to $1 trillion a year. Like it,
Well, then
it
you
has
think
to be
about it.
fixed.
If you got the super rich, like, I don't know, Donald Trump and Elon Musk to actually pay a bit more tax, the Treasury might look a little rosier. Greg, pleasure talking to you as always. Robust ideas. Listening.
What we just witnessed is a pattern that often happens when Republican figures appear on British political programs. They are pushed, questioned, and forced to defend their arguments in real time. And in this exchange, Matthew Wright highlighted one of the biggest debates surrounding Elon Musk's role in the Trump administration: accountability. The argument presented was that Musk is no different from other government officials because he answers to the president. But Matthew challenged that comparison by pointing out a major difference. Cabinet officials go through confirmation processes, have defined responsibilities, and ultimately face public scrutiny. Elon Musk, however, was not elected by the American people, yet he has gained significant influence over government decisions. That raises a wider question about democracy. How much power should an unelected individual have, and who holds them responsible when controversial decisions are made? The debate became even more interesting because of Musk's close relationship with Donald Trump and the influence he has gained through that connection. Whether people support or oppose Musk, there is no denying that his role in politics has become one of the most talked about issues in America. And that is exactly why moments like this stand out. Because instead of just repeating prepared talking points, politicians and commentators are being challenged on the details of their arguments. Matthew Wright delivered his criticism with a bit of humor and personality, but the questions he raised were serious ones about power, influence, and accountability.